The military headquarters buzzed with its usual morning chaos, boots clattering, orders echoing, and the faint smell of coffee mixed with metal polish. It was inspection day, a day when every soldier double-checked their medals, hoping to impress the brass. Tell me your city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy hearing about real people and real moments, don't forget to subscribe. Colonel Richard Morrow was already there, tall, stern, decorated with more ribbons than most could dream of. He had seen everything: wars, cowardice, courage, and ambition. Nothing surprised him anymore, until she walked in. A young woman, barely in her 20s, wearing a perfectly pressed uniform that didn't quite match any division he knew. Her stride was firm, confident, but her eyes, they held something deep. Something almost haunting. Her name tag read, Amelia Hart. But what caught the colonel's attention wasn't her name. It was the unfamiliar silver badge on her shoulder. He frowned immediately. "Lieutenant?" he said sharply. "What branch is that insignia from? I've never seen it." She stood at attention, saluting perfectly. "Special assignment, sir. Special assignment?" he repeated, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Looks more like a fake badge from a costume store." The nearby soldiers chuckled quietly. The colonel's laughter followed, loud and condescending. Amelia didn't move. Her face stayed calm, but her hand clenched at her side. "With all due respect, sir," she said softly, "this badge was authorized under Presidential Directive 17B. The colonel burst out laughing again. "The president? Oh, that's rich. What's next? You're the First Lady's bodyguard." He turned to the other officers. "Gentlemen, looks like we've got a comedian in uniform." The laughter echoed down the marble corridor. Amelia let the humiliation settle in silence before she slowly reached into her inner pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. The wax seal was blue, embossed with an unmistakable presidential emblem. The laughter stopped. Colonel Morrow's grin faltered as she handed him the letter. "Read it." "Sir," she said quietly. He broke the seal, expecting a prank. But the paper inside bore the golden crest of the presidential office. Real, unmistakable, and official. His eyes scanned the text, and his throat went dry. "Lieutenant Amelia Hart is appointed by direct presidential order to oversee classified research under the Veterans Integration Program. All commanding officers are to provide full access and cooperation. Signed, the President of the United States." At the bottom, the presidential stamp pressed deep in red wax. Silence fell over the entire hall. The same officers who laughed now stood frozen. The colonel looked up, his voice low. "Lieutenant, I didn't realize," Amelia interrupted softly. "No, sir. You weren't meant to." Her eyes flicked to his medals, then back to his face. "Sometimes respect isn't earned by rank, but by reason." The colonel had no words. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed. And as Amelia turned to walk away, her father's name shimmered faintly from the folder she carried. Major Daniel Hart. The colonel stood frozen, the sealed letter still trembling in his hand. Around him, whispers rippled through the corridor. The same officers who had laughed moments ago now stared at Amelia with wide, uneasy eyes. He cleared his throat. "Lieutenant?" "Wait." Amelia turned slowly. Her expression was unreadable, calm yet heavy, like someone carrying a lifetime of unspoken stories. I served with a Hart once," he said awkwardly. "Major Daniel Hart. You wouldn't happen to—" "He was my father," she replied softly. The words hit him like a sudden gust of wind. For a moment, the colonel forgot where he stood. Major Daniel Hart, the man who had saved an entire platoon during the Cooner Valley ambush. The man who never returned home alive. The man every soldier remembered as the one who smiled even under fire. The colonel's voice cracked. "Your father was a hero." Amelia's eyes glistened. "He was more than that, sir. He was a man who believed this uniform should mean something, not for rank, not for pride, but for purpose." She looked around the vast hallway filled with golden plaques and polished medals on display. After he died, I learned what happened after the headlines faded. The paperwork, the forgotten families, the veterans lost in silence. That's what the president wanted to change. The colonel lowered his gaze. So this program, Veterans Integration, it's real. It's more than real, she said quietly. It's personal. My father's letters inspired it. His journal was found years after his death. The president read it himself. Amelia's hand trembled slightly as she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small, faded notebook. Its edges burnt, the handwriting inside barely legible. "This," she whispered, "is what built my badge." The colonel took a hesitant step closer. "May I?" She nodded. Dottie opened the notebook. The first page bore a message written in ink, smudged by time and tears. "If I die in a land far from home, tell my daughter the fight was never about enemies. It was about hearts. Make sure the soldiers who return are not forgotten." The colonel's eyes stung. He shut the notebook gently, handing it back with trembling fingers. "I remember that day," he murmured. "Canoe Valley? I was part of the second extraction team. We were too late." Amelia nodded slowly. "He saved 8 men that day. One of them was you, wasn't he?" The colonel froze. His memory flashed. The chaos, the fire, the helicopter's rotors slicing through smoke, and a man dragging him to safety. Before disappearing into the flames, his lips parted. "I never knew his name. Until now." Their eyes met, and for the first time, the rigid line between ranks, gender, and generations disappeared. All that remained was gratitude. Amelia straightened her cap. "The badge you laughed at, it's more than metal. It's his promise. And now it's mine." The colonel's voice was barely a whisper. "Lieutenant Hart, I owe your father my life." She gave a small nod. "Then maybe, sir, you can help me keep his mission alive." That evening, the headquarters had gone quiet. The corridors that once echoed with orders now hummed softly with the hum of fluorescent lights. Colonel Morrow sat alone in his office. Amelia's files spread across his desk like a puzzle of memories, photographs, service reports, and the president's directive letter, all stamped, classified level 1. He had read it a dozen times, but one line kept haunting him. "This program shall be led by Lt. Amelia Hart in honor of her late father, Major Daniel Hart, whose sacrifice remains the foundation of Project Valor." Project Valor. He'd heard whispers about it, a secret initiative to reform military rehabilitation, to support families of fallen soldiers. But no one ever said it came straight from the president's hand. The colonel's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. "Enter," he said. Amelia stepped in, carrying a small metal case. Her uniform still spotless, but her eyes weary. The kind of exhaustion that came from fighting battles no one could see. "Still up, sir?" she asked gently. He smiled faintly. "You sound like my wife used to." She walked closer, placing the case on his desk. "I thought you should see this." He opened it. Inside were a set of prototype devices, small metallic chips engraved with unit codes. "What are these?" he asked. "Memorial transmitters," she said softly. They stored the personal data, missions, and letters of fallen soldiers. "The president wants to install one for every name on the veterans' wall." The colonel's jaw tightened. "So they're never forgotten?" Amelia nodded. "Exactly. Their voices, their thoughts, preserved. When families visit, they'll hear messages in their loved ones' own words." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. "And the badge?" She smiled faintly, touching the silver emblem on her shoulder. "This badge isn't for authority. It's a reminder. Every officer who joins Project Valor wears one, not because we outrank others, but because we represent those who can no longer speak." Silence filled the room again. Heavier this time, sacred. The colonel stared at her with quiet admiration. "You know, I misjudged you," he said finally. "When I saw that badge this morning, I thought it was a child's fantasy. But now," he shook his head, Now I see your father in you. Her lips trembled slightly. That means more than you know, sir. He stood, straightening his coat. If the president trusts you, Lieutenant, then so do I. Whatever you need, men, resources, clearance, it's yours. Her expression softened. Thank you, Colonel. But I don't need men. I need believers. He smiled faintly. Then you've got one. As she turned to leave, he added, Lieutenant? She stopped. I checked the records. Your father's last radio transmission. It wasn't fully decoded. I think there's something in it you should hear. Amelia froze, her heart pounding. You have it? He nodded slowly. It was archived under restricted files. If you're ready, I'll play it. Amelia swallowed hard. I've been ready for 10 years. The colonel led Amelia down a dimly lit corridor deep beneath headquarters, a place most soldiers never saw. The air smelled of dust and old secrets. The walls were lined with cold steel doors marked restricted access. At the end of the hallway, he stopped before a small, reinforced room with a flickering yellow light above it. This is the communications archive, he said quietly. Every call, every radio message from past operations is stored here. Amelia's heart raced. Her boots echoed softly as they stepped inside. The room was small, filled with old recording equipment and stacks of labeled data reels. The colonel walked over to a machine in the corner, one that hadn't been touched in years. He inserted a reel marked, Conner Valley, Op 47D Hart. D. Static crackled through the speakers. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then a familiar voice broke through, rough but steady. This is Major Hart. To command, extraction team under heavy fire. We've got wounded. I'll hold the line. Amelia's breath hitched. Her father's voice, real, alive. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. The voice continued, fragmented but clear enough to cut through time. Tell Colonel Morrow. Tell him to pull back his team. I'll cover their retreat. He has a family. My daughter, she deserves a father like him. Amelia's eyes filled instantly. The colonel froze, his heart twisted as the truth landed like a hammer. He whispered, He saved me. Because of you. The static flared again, followed by one last faint message. If anyone finds this recording, tell my little girl. Her father was proud of her before she ever wore the uniform. And when she does, tell her to wear it for love, not for war. The tape ended. Silence. A silence so deep it hurt. Amelia pressed her hand to her chest, her body trembling. Tears streamed down her face, but she stood tall, like a soldier, like his daughter. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she turned toward the colonel, her voice breaking but firm. He knew I'd be here one day. That's why he left this. The colonel's own eyes glistened. He wasn't just brave, Lieutenant. He was wise. And he saw something in you even back then. Amelia smiled faintly through tears. He saw something in all of us, sir. You wanted the Army to remember hearts, not just ranks. She took the silver badge off her shoulder and placed it gently on the console beside the reel. This badge doesn't belong to me anymore, she said softly. It belongs here, with his voice. The colonel placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice deep with emotion. No, Lieutenant. He didn't die for that badge to sit in the dark. He died so it would shine right where everyone can see what it stands for. You picked up the badge and handed it back to her. Keep it. Lead Project Valor. Make sure no one forgets what real honor looks like. Her tears turned into a trembling smile. I will, sir. For him, for everyone. As she walked out of the archive room, sunlight from the open door spilled across her uniform, making the silver badge shimmer like a living flame. The colonel watched her go, standing straighter than he had in years. Under his breath, he whispered, Major. You'd be proud of her. A week later, the grand ceremonial hall of the defense headquarters stood draped in flags. Rows of soldiers filled the seats, veterans, officers, commanders, Every rank united for one rare moment. At the front stood a podium adorned with the presidential seal, flanked by the national flag on each side. The president himself sat in the front row, his expression solemn yet proud. Colonel Morrow stood quietly at the edge of the stage, his uniform pressed, medals shining. But this day wasn't about him. It was about her. Lieutenant Amelia Hart walked toward the podium in her full uniform. The crowd murmured as her silver badge caught the light. For some, it was still unfamiliar, but soon everyone would know what it meant. She paused for a moment, glancing at the framed photograph of Major Daniel Hart displayed beside the stage. Her father's smile, frozen in time, seemed to watch over her. Taking a deep breath, she began, 10 years ago, my father, Major Daniel Hart, gave his life during an ambush in Cooner Valley. He saved 8 soldiers that day, men who lived, but carried his memory in silence. One of those men stands here today, Colonel Richard Morrow. The colonel's jaw tightened, eyes glistening. The audience turned to look at him. Realization dawning. Amelia continued, her voice steady, yet filled with emotion. My father believed the military strength was not just in weapons or ranks, but in the hearts that beat beneath these uniforms. He once said, if I die in a land far from home, tell my daughter the fight was never about enemies. It was about hearts. She paused, her throat tight, but she didn't let the tears fall. Today, that belief becomes a reality. Project Valor, the program born from his final words, will honor every soldier who gave everything and every family that lives with the echo of their courage. The president leaned forward, listening intently. Amelia reached for a small metallic chip, one of the memorial transmitters. She held it up for everyone to see. Each of these chips holds the voice and story of a fallen hero. Soon, every name on the veterans' wall will speak again, reminding us that bravery doesn't die. It becomes legacy. The audience grew silent. Some soldiers bowed their heads. Others wiped tears quietly. She looked at the president. Sir, thank you for believing in this mission, for giving my father's memory the honor it deserved. The president rose slowly, walking toward her. His hand rested on her shoulder. Lieutenant Hart, he said, his voice deep and warm, your father didn't just serve this nation. He changed it. And through you, he still does. He gestured to an aide, who brought forward a new certificate sealed with red wax. By presidential order, the president announced, this silver badge shall now be recognized as a mark of the Order of Valor, honoring every soldier who serves not for power, but for compassion. The entire hall rose in applause. Officers saluted. Veterans stood tall, some crying openly. Colonel Morrow's salute was the highest of them all. Amelia turned to face the crowd, her voice trembling but strong. This badge was once called fake, she said. Now it carries the voice of truth, the voice of every soldier who gave their all for love of country and love of people. She stepped back from the podium. The sunlight streaming through the high windows caught her badge once more. And for a moment, it looked as if it was glowing. As the hall erupted in applause. Amelia whispered quietly to the photo of her father, we did it. Dad, they'll never forget. Colonel Morrow placed a hand over his heart. Standing beside her, and in that silent exchange between a soldier's daughter and her father's comrade, the circle of honor was finally complete. I really appreciate you watching all the way through. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile for a moment, let me know in the comments. I read them all, and they honestly keep me going more than you can imagine.